So we're going to try this one again. I wanted to start out with the sunrise simply because I enjoy seeing them. I consider every new day a good day. Then it depends on what I do with it at that point to whether it remains a good day or not. So, so quit the job at East Lake Magnetics and got hired. Well, I should say this the right way. I was given the job opportunity to work at a private country club by my best friend, who was also, for lack of a better term, well, actually his title was manager. He didn't do anything differently than I did except for scheduling, which there were three people. It wasn't a tough schedule. Um, he did some budgetary work as well, but I'm not here to talk about him. Um, it was very odd for me because this was the first time I didn't have the potential of somebody breathing down my neck to make sure I was doing my job. I got to work independently, which was, had its pluses and minuses. The golf pro, although he wasn't my boss, could certainly come down and tell me what to do. And he was not shy about letting me know he had that authority over me. My job was actually, I was a golf cart mechanic was my title, although I didn't do a whole lot more mechanics than swapping out batteries and replacing flat tires and keeping the paint shiny on them and once in a while replacing a roof, like if, a cart got rolled or something. I'll talk about that later. My main job was to keep clean golf carts out in front of the pro shop, the golf shop, um, and to get the ones that have been used already for the day back inside, hose down, maybe scrub down if the seats were dirty. You give them a little bit of a scrub up, and keep the batteries filled. They were electric golf carts, so they charged for like 12 hours, and they charged every night. Um, but the thing about charging them all the time, and we did charge them all the time, we turned on every charger every night, whether that cart got taken today or not. Um, the problem with that was that the charging process in and of itself uh, evaporated a lot of the acid out, which you had to replace with water. And in hindsight, and I was thinking about this, in hindsight, it doesn't sound so horrible, but I was the put the water in the batteries guy, and there's 6 batteries in a cart, and there's 3 water ports on each battery, so I only had to do 6 carts a day. You wouldn't think it would be that bad, but um, yeah, I lost interest in that real quick. I mean, I kept doing it, but the battery acid would splash all over the place. It would, there was a period of time where I probably didn't have, fingerprints, just because, the acid was always chewing my fingerprints off. I'm sidetracking again, aren't I? I remember when I first got there, they had really just built the barn. Before that, it was just 4 walls around the golf carts, and they actually built the golf carts a proper building, real solid walls and real doors instead of just a cart door that you could drive through, and a roof. It had a roof on it now. And if you've ever lived or worked in a construction area, you know that dust and dirt and debris tend to pile up maybe just a little bit, and they had just, like I said, just got done finishing it. They had just stuccoed the walls on the outside, and the golf pro comes down and tells me that there's an older couple that owns the country club, that and I think like 7 others, and she was going to come inspect the cart barn, and it looked a mess, and I should clean it up. So I spent probably 5 or 6 hours of my 8-hour shift cleaning up the cart barn, sweeping it and picking up all the debris and throwing everything out and just, making it look, the expression I use is mom ready, right? Um, and I did, and I got it done. I got it done before the end of my shift, and the next guy came on at 3, and she showed up about 3:15. I was already gone. He got all the praise, and, but, it looked good, and that's what matters, I guess. Normally I worked, well, it was about half and half. Normally I worked the morning shift, which meant I was there to open the club, or the cart barn. Um, and there were times when I would, I don't ever think I was ever really technically late. I mean, probably 15 minutes or so, but that's not really, I mean, yes, it is late. Yes, it is 15 minutes late. One could argue that it's half an hour late. Um, but, it's not like I was scheduled to be there at 6 and I showed up at 9. I remember one morning I rolled over and looked at my clock, and it said it was quarter till, and I knew it was a 17 to 20 minute drive to work, and it's now quarter till. So I'm going to be late, and just unhappy in the middle of the winter. So I pull on my thermals and my cords and 3 or 4 layers of shirts because it's cold. And I hop in my 1960s, well, it wasn't mine, it was my stepfather's, my 1960-something Carmen Ghia, and I take off for work. And I get there in, 17 to 20 minutes. I'm not, to get a ticket would make the trip last longer, and I needed to get there as quickly to on time as I could. Not to mention that by this point in my life, I probably had a baggie of something illegal with me and didn't need a highway patrol finding out. Um, so I go up to the clubhouse. That's where this is, we still had time clocks back then. That's where the time clock was, and went up to the clubhouse, and it's probably 5 or 8 after. It's not horrible. I go and I go into the clubhouse, and the door is locked, and I'm thinking, oh, good, Pat, the other guy who opens up. Pat's late too. He didn't open up the clubhouse yet. I can say I was here on time, and I go downstairs uh, and start putzing, open up the cart barn and start putzing around and look at the clock in there, and it's now um, 4:12 a.m. Yeah, I didn't wake up late. I woke up 2 hours early. I saw it was quarter till. I just never bothered seeing what it was quarter till. It's one of those moments you just don't forget soon. Um, but like I said, my job there was, to do basic mechanics on the golf carts, replace, do R&Rs, remove and replace tires and keep them painted. Nobody really cared what I did, provided I had 9 carts waiting in front of the pro shop at any given time. That was the standard. That was the visual. That's what the general manager of the place wanted to see, and her office window looked right down onto, in front of the pro shop. So, 9 was the magic number. Three rows of 3, or 3 columns of 3, I guess, depending on how you look at it. And otherwise, I was pretty well ignored. And I know I was pretty well ignored because I used to do things to see if people were paying attention to me. One of the things I would do is occasionally I would bring, because the uniform they gave us were corduroy pants, and they gave us a brown polo shirt and a tan polo shirt, and we could wear whichever one we wanted. It didn't matter. It had to be one of their polo shirts. It had to have, the country club's logo on it. All the employees wore the same basic things, except for, of course, the golf pros. They got to wear what they wanted because, they were special. But all of us minor employees all had to wear the uniform. And so I would switch shirts in the middle of the day from brown to tan or tan to brown to see if anybody would notice. Nobody ever did. I started doing things like shaving half of my face just to see if anybody would notice. Nobody ever did. Um, so I was pretty much invisible as long as the carts were out. and I started to take advantage of this during this period of my life. I like to as I say, smoke a lot of pot, and I was also becoming fond of something that I will call the Peruvian marching powder. So I did that as much as I did that as much as I did anything else. But the carts were always out, and that's what they cared about. We at one point, when I worked nights, one of the benefits of working the closing shift for that job was that you got to go around every night and pick up the flags because otherwise they'd get stolen. Because gosh, everybody wants a flag from a country club, and by flags I mean sitting in the pins on the greens. So we got to do that, but it's 18 holes. The golf cart itself maybe only did 6 miles an hour, maybe eight. On flat land. I mean, it was the club was located in hills, so they were geared guild. They were geared more for hills than they were for flat land, right? But we had figured out a way to trick the motor into thinking it had 12 batteries instead of six, and simply we just added another solenoid and another micro switch, and every time you hit the micro switch, it would pass twice the power through to the DC motor, which made it an entertaining ride sometimes. There were, as I said, some hills there, and you could get up to 25, 30 miles an hour, which understandably doesn't seem that fast, but when you're in a golf cart, which is not something that's really built for speed, it got sketchy sometimes, and it was fun. I enjoyed that. There was this one hole, the 11th hole, not that it matters, where it had a sharp left turn into a tunnel. So you get to the 12th and 13th, and then you come back out through the tunnel to get to the 14th. But at the bottom of this hill on the 11th hole, there was that classic concrete drainage ditch that you may or may not know about. It was only about 4 or 6 inches deep. It wasn't that deep. It was the classic V shape, angled down at both ends. And normally, if you were, good to your golf cart, you would slow down and take that slow and everything would be fine. But I'm coming down the hill in a double-speeded cart, and I've taken this turn many, many times. So I figured out how to hit that drainage ditch just right so that I could take that, so I could be ready to take that turn at full speed, right? Um, if you hit it with the, what was it, the passenger side front, and then driver's front and passenger's rear, and then driver's rear, so like a 1-2-1 pattern on the tires, you were just about lined up perfectly to just go into that tunnel at full speed and hope to God nobody was in there, which nobody ever was. And that's fine. I mean, and that method worked, you know, almost every time, except for the one time it didn't, and I slid the cart a little too far sideways and hit it with both passenger tires at the same time. And I didn't technically roll the cart, but I did flip it over 3/4 of the way. It went over the top and landed on its other side. Now, if you don't know, adrenaline is a wonderful thing, and I am not small by any stretch of the imagination. Height has always been one of my advantages. Um, Body mass has always been one of my advantages. That's the nice way of saying I'm fat. And I was able to use both to get the cart back up on its tires, and uh, it still ran. It was, obviously quite banged up. Uh, and the boss and I agreed that somebody obviously had stolen it or borrowed it and taken it for a joyride and crashed it. And I found it when I was out picking up the flags at night, fortunately, and went back and got a tow bar and towed it home. And we'd repair it, and stuff like this happens. We are in a neighborhood, even though it was an upper class neighborhood, it had teenage kids, and that thing might just happen. Nobody could prove that it didn't. There were This was well before the age of cameras being installed everywhere. Thank goodness. Thank goodness so much of my youth was before the age where cameras were installed everywhere, really, honestly. So got that home, or back to the cart barn, which, by this point, well, if not by this point, soon after, I'll get to that later, maybe. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of time. So I'll go ahead and add this to the story of the double-speeded cart. We did get it repaired. It was no big deal. I mean, we'd had no major body accidents or major accidents with any of the carts. So, it was just a one-off kind of thing. We did run it double-speeded for a while longer until one of us, I'm certain it wasn't me, uh, was picking up flags one night and was a little too heavy-handed on the double speed throttle and tended to use it everywhere instead of just for your occasional speed burst like you were supposed to, and fried the motor. The guy from the golf cart company, who apparently we were renting these from, not buying these from, came and we showed him the motor. And if you know how the inside of the DC motor works, it's all just wires. And we had melted. I had melted all the wires. He looked at us and he said, "That's a $3,000 piece of equipment. I'm going to assume it was faulty unless it happens again." What else? Uh, ba, 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 ba. By this point, I was really learning to enjoy, as I said before, the Peruvian marching powder. I enjoyed it so much that I was spending literally everything I could on it. I mean, I had to work, and I had to buy my own food when I wasn't at home. But the guy at the snack bar was a friend, and he'd whip you up a quick burger when nobody was looking, and that'd get you through the day. All the soda you could drink, so that didn't matter. And my parents were starting to charge me rent. When I turned 18, they started charging me rent, and by the time I was 19, I was sick and tired of it. I understand in hindsight why they did it, but I had better things to spend my money on than paying to live in a house that I'd lived in free my entire life, right? And so I moved to the country club, and I lived in the cart barn. I lived in that storage area in the back. I made that my bedroom. It was interesting times, to say the least. Looks like we're about to run out of time. I did want to mention that one of the benefits of that job was I got to meet some people, and one of the people I got to meet was a gentleman named John Candy. You may or may not know who he is. Here's a quick clip of him from Vacation. Great guy. He was actually I introduced myself to him once. I didn't gush over him. I just I thanked him for making me laugh so much, and he said he was happy to do it. And he went on his way, and I went on my way. I mean, he was a member of the club. I wasn't gonna you know take up all of his time. I had learned better than that anyway. Hey, I'm out of time. Stay blessed, and we'll see you in the next one. Maybe I'll continue the club. Maybe I'll move on to something else. I have no idea yet.